Colonel Bob Sink was a magnificent commander, but this time he had had a little too much to drink, and his order to dispatch another patrol to capture additional prisoners did not make sense. We had already captured sufficient prisoners for interrogation. A second patrol would only result in casualties for no apparent reason. Further exacerbating the situation was freshly fallen snow along the river that had quickly turned to ice during the day. If I followed Colonel Sink's order, the enemy would have heard us coming a long way off. What to do? I responded, "Yes, sir."
A good friend of mine, actually a family friend. I consider him a friend, but he wasn't really a close friend of mine, but he was a very close friend of my family. And it was a gentleman by the name of Wilton, and he was talking to me about men of authority. And he went back telling a story about when he was in Vietnam, and he was a first sergeant of a platoon, and their previous second lieutenant who ran the platoon had died a few days before in a firefight, who hadn't given the best of orders. And they assigned a new lieutenant, and they told Wilton who he was because he was the first sergeant. He ran the platoon essentially for the second lieutenant, and he was in charge of looking after the men. And this second lieutenant had graduated from college, which back then was a bigger deal than it is today. He was educated, had gone to the war college, and was a second lieutenant. And when he got there, he told Wilton that 0600 in the morning, we are going to be storming this hill over here. Wilton looked at it and told him, that's a bad idea. We're going to lose at least a minimum of half of the platoon if we do that. I don't think it's a good idea, sir. And he told him, well, I'm in charge, and we will damn well storm that hill in the morning. Wilton told him, yes, sir.
And then promptly ignored the order. So he's doing what I was basically, what I was saying. Mm-hmm. Like, if he just said, no, sir, we're not going to do that, guess what? He's going to get fired. Mm-hmm. And now we're going to get someone else put in charge. And even if he doesn't get fired, he's hurting his reputation. Mm. So it's a bad situation. But what he decides to do is go, got it, sir. We'll take care of it. Mm-hmm. And then he promptly ignores the order. Now back to the book. To give the impression of compliance, however, I assembled the men in a building and told them we were not going to send out this patrol because I did not think it was feasible. I also informed them that my neck was in a noose if anyone ever said anything about it. With that, the men lay down and caught some much-needed sleep, and I took the radio and adjusted mortar and artillery fire on my supposed objective. And here's his thoughts on it. On reflection, I did exactly the right thing, and I have never had any regrets. There was insufficient time for preparation. The field to our front was wide open, and I would have lost too many men for no purpose. I wonder what I would have done had I been a career officer concerned about my own future. Would I have compromised my beliefs? The deliberate disobedience of a lawful order by my commanding officer presented an ethical dilemma of the first magnitude. But you can see it's a guy who's staying on his principles. Mm-hmm. And his principles were to accomplish the mission, take care of his men. And he's weighing those things. Those things aren't black and white. Mm-hmm. Those things are not black and white, because you look at all the times he did do operations and missions and taskings where his guys got wounded and killed. But he saw what the purpose was. And now he sees something where there's no purpose, and he says, you know what, not going to do it. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't tell the boss. He just doesn't execute it.
And I asked Wilton, what did you do? And he said, I had to stop and think about it, and I had to weigh out if I was going to let this man of authority give a bad order that was going to kill off all of those men that I had to look after. And he said, and I did the only thing that could be done. When he was taking a shit in a latrine, I rolled a grenade under the door and walked off. When he was taking a shit in a latrine, I rolled a grenade under the door and walked off. And he said, and that's how you deal with a man of authority who is giving you bad advice and bad orders.
So, and you know, there's stories of SEALs in Vietnam doing that. And I heard that from the Vietnam SEALs would tell me, hey, if they got directed to do something that they didn't think was a good mission, I've talked about this before. Oh, we're going to go, you want us to go 3 kilometers away and set up an ambush on this river that's in really tough enemy controlled areas, and we don't know what the intelligence is on who's going to come down that river? Okay, cool. And they'd patrol 200 meters out the gate, set up a little perimeter right close to camp where there's no problems, smoke a couple cigarettes, spend a few hours out there, walk back. Yeah, hey, nothing happened. No one came down the river.
I would think you'd have to be pretty responsible, though, if you're going to kind of exercise that course of action. Otherwise, you get someone who's just like, nope, don't feel like it, don't feel like it.
Yeah, no, it's obviously something that a guy like Dick Winters did very rarely. And the SEALs in Vietnam, it's not like they were blowing missions off all the time.
Right.
But they, you know, like I said, if something comes up where you completely disagree with it, but you don't disagree with it to the point where you want to want to make a stand that's going to make you get fired, or now you're not supporting your guys anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh?
You know, okay, cool. You kept them alive that night. Well, who's coming in to take your place?
Right.
That's the question. Who's coming in to take your place? And you don't know who that is. Mm-hmm. And what's their best interest going to be? Because whoever comes in to take your place is going to be a company guy that's going to be, you know, he's going to be a guy that's going to obey every last direct order from the guy. And this is, you know, it's strange too. I mean, here I am. I was as motivated to be in the military as I could possibly be. You know, so I'm not sitting here calling for mutiny from guys.
Right.
But I am telling you to use common sense. Mm-hmm. And you got to put common sense on top of everything. And sometimes common sense outweighs orders. That's just the way it is. It's rare.
Yeah.
And I said this last time as well. It's rare. It's not like you're getting these crazy orders from up the chain of command. People aren't advancing in the military because they're idiots. Right?
Yeah. And it's not like they're not on your team.
And it's not like they want you to get killed.
Right.
And you know, maybe, you know, in this case, he could have given some pushback and said, hey, you know what, boss, here's what's going on. There's fresh snow. They're going to hear us coming a mile away. We don't have good cover to the front. This is not a good operation. Mm-hmm. But maybe he heard the tone of the colonel's voice and just said, hey, this guy, if I say that and then I don't do it, or if I say that, it's going to make me suspicious. So you know what? I got it, sir.
Yeah.
And then don't do it.
No, I don't talk about my past because I used to work in intelligence. I worked in intelligence until I cracked under the stress from the PTSD, and then they terminated me and told me that if I ever talked about specifically what I did, that I would spend the rest of my life in prison. I do come across as the tough guy, the alpha male,